What up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball, a New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I'm your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrick Raphel. What's poppin' with you this Sunday?
What up, bro? We got some football today, but it is the last preseason game. I'm ready to get into some real football because college football week 0 kind of got the appetite back. You know, it wasn't the greatest slate, but that we started off early with that Georgia Tech Florida State game, so I'm getting in that football mode. It was really good. I can't tell you what kind of mind frame waking up in the morning and hearing the theme song, the college game day puts you in. But if you know, you know. And so I'm excited to get back in the football season. We this is a Pelicans podcast, and we live in New Orleans, and we from New Orleans and live in New Orleans. So football is always something that we cherish a lot, and obviously that's been a big part of your life. What up, Big Pop? That's obviously been a part of your life as a former football player. So, man, I'm excited, but I'm excited to get into some basketball things, man. Pels made some moves, so the NBA is always watching, always lurking. Some moves are always being made, so I'm interested to get into what they've done and to talk about what everybody loves to do in the offseason, rankings. So we're going to get into some rankings. But how's everything on your side, bro?
Everything is blessed, man. Yeah, this is that time of year we talked about last week. The kids went to school, so there's normally like a week or two where you're just trying to get to the start of the season. Football started this weekend. Crazy that Florida State went all the way to Ireland to lose on a last-second field goal to Georgia Tech and no longer be top 10.
Top 10 ranking.
Top 10 ranking done. Way to start the season.
Top 10 ranking done in week 0. Get it up out of here.
And then obviously again, football wrapping up from a preseason perspective. I don't know, man. That guy wearing Rattler on the back of his jersey for the Saints, kind of good. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say on that. But yeah, basketball's around the corner. The Pelicans apparently are having a voluntary / mandatory training in California next week. The whole team's supposed to be there besides Daniel Tice. So we're getting close. People don't have to make up things to talk about in the summer. Training camp is almost here. And before we get too far into that and what the Pelicans have in store for that, make sure you guys will follow us on X, on Twitter, on IG, on TikTok. That's NO Basketball No E. Make sure you're liking the episode below. And if you're not already, I don't know why not. Go ahead and subscribe to New Orleans Basketball. Something tells me this is going to be a special season for the Pelicans. So, since last time we talked, there's been a little bit of movement. No, Brandon Ingram is still a Pelican, but so is Javonte Green. So, Javonte Green was signed off waivers as a free agent to the Pelicans. He played his last stint with Chicago the last couple years, and especially at the end of last season, playing about 12 minutes or 22 minutes a game, averaging about 12 points per game. Kind of came on the scene. You could see some of the Chicago fans and media kind of disappointed when they saw that he signed with the Pelicans because he was one of those players that you see kind of at the end of the season, you're worried like, okay, what can they bring to a team next season? Well, the Pelicans went and jumped on this guy. And you and I were texting right away, and you're like, man, this is a Willie Green type guy. We talked about this all season. The main things were what? You had to get more athletic at the center position. You did that now. Is it enough? You shall see, but you did that. You had to get a more point guard-oriented guard in the starting lineup. You traded for a former All-Star, DeJounte Murray. And the last piece of that was you had to find a way to replace Najee Marshall's production, whether that's player for player or that's multiple players filling that role. I look at a guy like Javonte Green, I'm like, man, there's a lot of Najee-ish to him. So what were your thoughts on that overall acquisition from the Pelicans?
Yeah, you want to talk about a Willie Green guy. Javonte is a Willie Green special. Let's call it that. I think he is just the type of guy that Willie Green loves and loves to deploy in a whole bunch of different ways. You saw the ways he used Najee, and a lot of the reason why Najee got his pay is because the Pelicans deployed him in so many different ways. Guard that guy, be the leading bench scorer for a time. Now I need you to shoot 40% from the 3-point line. And I think Javonte is kind of in that same mode. He's a dog. He's a guy that's like competing at the defensive end. So of course, like that's what going to put him in Willie Green's good graces. But he has a little bit of offensive game. Like he's a lot like Najee in that he gets like unorthodox buckets. But man, he got a mean streak in him. He'll dunk on you and all kind of stuff. So I liken him. If Najee was the knife, this is similar to that, right? This is sort of a knife kind of guy, and I think you'll see a lot of similarities between. It's like a gumbo of like Josh Hart and Najee. Like it's just a whole bunch of amalgamation of those guys in Javonte. But I think he has a little bit of a better ceiling offensively. So I'm excited to see. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be featured in the rotations early, like we saw with Najee. And I think this kind of puts a little bit of a damper and pressure on one of the guys, Jordan Hawkins, that we're going to get into stepping up his role in order to earn minutes. It's not going to just be given to him because he's a high draft pick now. Going into this season, I think that Javonte Green is going to start now ahead of Jordan Hawkins as far as the rotation goes, and Jordan's going to have to come in there and earn those. So I'm going to be excited to how they see it. I kind of like that guy being at the end, that kind of guy being at the end of the bench, and I think he's going to be a really good positive in addition for the Pelicans.
Right. The first thing I thought about it when I saw the move was, okay, the Pelicans are doubling down. They said, what? We want a super athletic roster from top to bottom, from the first player to the 15th player to the 3 two-ways. We want guys that can go on both sides of the court. And so with this move, you saw the other move of Matt Ryan being like, go. And so to your point, all summer long, we weren't necessarily looking, can Jordan Hawkins become a point guard, but could he be good enough on the defensive end? Well, now Jordan Hawkins was like, damn, they got rid of Dyson, they got rid of Najee, here's my chance. And then you bring in another veteran. And so he's really going to have to be one of those players that comes into training camp showing the next step that he's taking, especially on the defensive end, because to your point, I think he's going to have to earn it more so than be given that spot in the rotation. So there were some other things before we get into the main topic today. Josh Hart had some comments where, it felt unnecessary, but he was asked just about his trade to New Orleans, and he came out and said some controversial words, and in typical New Orleans fashion, immediately was met with a response. So he comes out and he says, again, this is Josh Hart. He's loved as a role player, even though he wasn't here for that long from the Pelicans fan base. He goes out and say no one's excited to be traded to the Pelicans. Immediately, I text you, I was like, hey, he obviously has not talked to DeJounte Murray, because this man has been posting Pelicans gear since the moment he got on his private jet to come to New Orleans. What did you feel about those comments? Do you think it was just Josh Hart being Josh Hart? He's kind of like that on his podcast and in person. Or do you think like, hey, there's another thing to put some, we're in NCAA mode, put some wall inspiration for you to tap on the way to the court?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the Pelicans, especially like the younger Pelicans who were there with him, like Zion and Brandon Ingram and Trey, like those guys, how they're going to, I'm sure they got that game circled. Obviously, you saw Trey pitch, the Pelicans posted it. Trey pitched Zion pitched Josh Hart stuff, and then Trey dunking on him and stuff, and pitches like they've already have the memes and the clips going, for him. But I think it's one of those things that it's like, I think there is a kernel of truth to it that like people, obviously New Orleans is not a free agent destination, for whatever particular reason, right? Obviously JJ Redick decided to come and CJ axed out and wanted to come to New Orleans. But like historically, it's not, it hasn't been the free agent destination. However, it's a beautiful city, and it's a city that will love you if you just let it. And I think everybody who has been to the city and has played for the city understands what the sports team, especially like the Saints have always had that, but the Pelicans are starting to have a little bit of that. Like City is connected with the Pelicans. And so you get that kind of response, especially for a guy who has been here, and you saw him try to clear it up a little bit with a quote tweet and kind of clear it up. But the damage is done, to just speak on the city, kind of like negatively unprompted. Like you could have said anything. You could have said, "Hey, I got traded," and whatever. But like, and then you did it. I was about to say you did it in front of like New Orleans royalty, which low key Wayne not stepping up and saying. So that's a different conversation for a different story. A different story for a different conversation. But it just was. It was. I think Josh. It was a fraudulent slip, but I don't think he knew. He should have known, but I don't think he knew just how much people ride for the city of New Orleans. But I'm sure he knows now. So I'm interested to see when that Knicks game is and when the Knicks come to New Orleans, because I'm sure the petty admins behind the New Orleans Pelicans social media account will be ready, and I think the guys will be ready to kind of put a show on.
Right. I mean, again, in some ways and facets, he's right? The Pelicans haven't won anything. The New Orleans is not a basketball city from the outside world. Like, people look and they're like, well, where am I going? Like, they haven't won in years. Like, where am I going? But I think that tide's starting to turn. I think with the collection of talent that's starting to come into these doors, and again, the players and coaches and staff members and all things like that, I think that's starting to turn around. But again, the only way you do that is continue to win. So let's jump into it. This is our favorite thing to do all summer long, is to, especially the way the Pelicans roster is constructed. Again, it's different from a Nuggets. It's different from even a Knicks. It's different from a Celtics. Whereas this roster is full of a bunch of young players that haven't walked into their prime yet. And so different from, some of these more established teams that have got established veterans that have been there, done that, what they're bringing to the table every time. This team is still kind of in a question mark mode, because you don't know what the best version of Zion is. You don't know what the best version of Trey Murphy is. You don't know what the best version of Brandon Ingram. Like, you don't know what the best version of your best players are yet, which is both frustrating but also extremely intriguing of like, how high is this ceiling? And so what this exercise is for people who weren't, rocking with us last summer or the summers before, is essentially we're taking not, who's going to have the biggest impact, because you could just say Zion every single year, but whose growth, right? And taking that next step in their own personal development means the most to the team next season and has the biggest impact for the team next season. So like last year, my number one player was Jose Alvarado. Your number one player was Herb Jones. Jose took another step, shot 38%. Herb Jones took a huge step, shot 42% from three. And those were two areas that we pointed out. If you're going to be in this roster and you're going to be hellacious on the defensive end, you can't be a zero on the offensive end. And both of those players took steps in that right direction. The year before, I had Herb Jones. You had Trey Murphy. So again, like you're seeing the trajectory of where this could go. Again, a couple years ago, you look back at this roster with Zion and BI when they were 24 and 24 points a game, and it was Derek Favors and it was Eric Bledsoe. And it was it wasn't a lot of good role players you were excited about. Well, now I feel as if the role players are kind of caught up. And so we'll jump into this. We'll do snake version. I'll start with number 10. You do 9 and 8, and we'll go backwards from there. So I'm just going to jump right into it and get it started. So for my number 10 player, whose growth I think has the most impact on the season next year, I'm going with CJ, right? We talk about not having a whole lot of established players where this is what they are, right? Like, this is who they are. Most of the players on this roster are below 26, right? They're not in their primes yet. CJ is not that. CJ is an established veteran. He was brought in for the leadership that you've already start to see trickle down into Zion, trickle down into Trey Murphy. Zion says CJ is one of his favorite teammates, probably because he's the one to call him out, right, on some of those things that have led up until this point. And so for CJ, for a guy who knows what his game is, even though he's been so malleable over the past couple of years, kind of changing his game to fit the talent that's available. I'm not even going to say on the roster. That's just available for a guy to change his shot types and change his shot archy last year and be more point guard, but then be more off ball, but then also shoot more threes than twos. Like, it was a lot to ask from him. And so in this scenario, again, you add an all-star in DeJounte Murray. You're looking at paying a Trey Murphy $20 million plus. Somebody has to take some type of step back. There's only one ball. There's only so many shots that can go up. And so for a CJ McCollum, can you be that sixth man? We've talked about that. We've talked about like how his skill set fits that role so perfectly. It's what's best for the team. It's naturally his playing style. And like he can be an offensive punch in a way where Dyson Daniels was a defensive punch coming off the bench next year. And so I look at CJ McCollum and I say, yes, you're established, but can you take one more mold to see how you can push this young core there? So that's my number 10 player. Who you got at 9?
Yeah, I got CJ a little higher, so I'll save my commentary for CJ when we get there. So at number 9 for me, I have DeJounte. Here. I have DeJounte Murray. Obviously the newcomer on the team is going to step into a big role coming over from Atlanta, and obviously his fit as the starting lead guard on the team is kind of the big thing. It's why you traded for him. So for him to be this low is, that's the question. But I think part of it, him being at 9 for me, is that he has a lot of things that are plug in for the Pelicans that the Pelicans have needed right now, that he's going to plug in and fill those holes right then and there. We're talking about turnovers. We're talking about lead guard mentality, as far as on the ball, getting people involved, and doing things and getting people set up and getting them the ball where they need to. We're talking about late game closing, right? This is a guy who needs to come in and address that late game situation. We all know the stat 0-22 when going into the fourth quarter without a lead throughout the season. And also how many blown leads have the Pelicans gone through. He's going to come in and fill some of those off the dump. So some of those things he needs to come and plug and play, and it'll fit, right then and there. Where he does need to grow, in a sense. And listen, we did a show with our guy from Atlanta with the Believe Hawks podcast, and he talked to us about some of the things that happen when DeJounte is on the floor and his, being able to have, multiple guys on the floor who need the ball, including DeJounte. I want to see him there was a bit of a clunkiness or you didn't know what was going on between Trey and DeJounte or who had the reins of the ball because, they weren't a perfect fit. Well, now you have Zion and Brandon. Like, it was just Trey Young and pass the ball to Bogdan, who might shoot. And then, obviously, Josh Johnson, he started getting his wings and things right. So you had other guys, but like supernova talent was Trey Young, and that was it. Now you're on a team with Zion, who obviously is going to be looking to explode on the scene. And he talked about how he's the superstar. You have Brandon Ingram, who, if he's still on the team, has everything in the world to prove as far as needing the ball and getting himself back into the good graces of the NBA mind frame. You have, like we talked about, CJ McCollum, and Trey Murphy is going to get a contract, and I'm sure the Pelicans are not going to want to pay him $20+ million to see him shoot 5 shots a game. And so you're going to have a lot of mouths to feed as the starting point guard. How does he grow into that where, yeah, you were sharing the backcourt with Trey, and maybe now you're not sharing the backcourt with such a heliocentric player, but Zion is going to need the ball and Brandon Ingram is going to need the ball, but you're also going to need to set those guys up as well. So he needs to be able to grow in that sense of balancing that and also keeping his aggression, because his scoring ability is going to be absolutely imperative for the Pelicans to get to where they want to go. So I think because he has a lot of things that he's just going to come in and naturally fit, I think there are other guys who need to grow in areas to make this year's Pelicans team the best. But I do think that DeJounte has some things to grow. And the first thing will be balancing everything that you have in front of you, as well as keeping yourself aggressive and looking to attack on the offensive end as well.
Right. I mean, I also had DeJounte at number 9, so that works out.
Oh, okay. There you go. Yeah.
You hit on the head, right? The clutch situation, being the organizer from that standpoint. Look, to me, it breaks down to this. you need to be more point guard than shoot guard, which me personally, I think that's a better position for DeJounte anyway. Like I look at DeJounte in San Antonio and the defensive hound that he was and the facilitator that he was versus when he went to Atlanta, he was asked to be something different, right? You were asked to be the main source of scoring. You were asked to play off another guard. And so naturally, you're not going to be as good defensively if you are doing so much more offensively. To your point, now you don't have to, right? Like you can just get other people set up in advantageous situations, and that can help you shine, and you can put more on the defensive end. And not only that, I think, and we've been talking about this for a long time, the Pelicans have a super niche and nice, kind locker room of good human beings. And I'm not saying DeJounte Murray is not one of them. From everything you can tell, like it sounds as if he is. But there's an edge to DeJounte Murray that the Pelicans locker room has desperately been needing. Like there's a leadership,
especially with Najee gone.
Yeah, there's like a little nasty streak in him that like you haven't seen as much from the Pelicans roster as currently constructed. So not only am I asking him to be more of an organizer on the court, but I'm asking you to be more of a leader off of it, right? And pushing people like he said he was going to do in ways that have been uncomfortable. Just not that long ago, before J.J. Redick was the head coach of the Lakers and he was on the Pelicans, he was talking about how the Pelicans were the quietest locker room in the NBA. And again, he might not be wrong just based off the personalities that you see. But with the DeJounte, I think that's a mix-up in the ingredients in the gumbo, so to speak, that you needed a little extra kick there. So I had DeJounte at number 9. Who you got at 8?
Yeah, that's good. All right, so at number 8, I got who I had at number 1 last year. I got Herb Jones here.
Okay.
I got Herb Jones here. And I think Herb's ascension last season from in that streak, in that middle of the season where, I mean, if it was going up from the corner, it was going in. Like there was no question. You were more, and it's crazy to say this, you were more surprised that Herb missed the corner 3 than like Trey at a certain point during the season. Like that's how money he was. And so you saw what it did for the offense. You saw what it did for his confidence and how it allowed the Pelicans to play him on the floor for long stretches of time to give him more of a burden on the offensive end and for him to be a release valve. Now, towards the end of the season, you saw, as quiet as it's been, Herb started dipping down in his point production and his 3-point percentage as teams start to say, okay, we can't just leave him open. We kind of have to do something towards like running towards him. He's on the game plan now, that corner 3. Once you get up to 45% from corner 3s, people are like, you probably need to guard that guy. And so I think that is the next step for him. He has to, that streak that he shot during the middle of the season towards like the All-Star break towards the end of the season, after the All-Star break and then towards the end of the season, that has to be a constant now. He has to make sure that corner 3 ball is something that is his game, his money. Doesn't matter if people are closing out on him. Doesn't matter if people are now going to shade you, whatever. Get confident in that 3 ball because that is your money shot. And I think if he can kind of carry some of that over, I think that's something that could really help the Pelicans this season. Also, I don't want him, and this is not something that Herb is going to do. I have zero fear that it's going to happen, but it's something I just want to say out loud. I don't want him to rest on his laurels. Herb, after trying, I don't think he was trying to, like, that was part of his, because he's not made up like that. That's part of his goals. I'm sure it was a goal, but it's not something he was like, oh, this is what I'm focused on. He wants to win. But making first team all defense is major, especially with it being the first year that you could just put anybody on no positions. You could put 5 centers up there. And Herb was the only non-center on first team all defense. Be hungry. Get there again. Take it up another notch, right? Be a mainstay on that first team all defense. And again, this is something that I don't think is going to happen. Herb has been a hellacious defender from the second he walked on the floor in the summer league when he got drafted. But I think if he comes into this season and look at this as his selection of first team all defense last year, as being like not an achievement, but something like, okay, this is the beginning of a run for me, because his point of attack defense, along with DeJounte, because I do think Herb is going to start, obviously next to DeJounte. I think they have the ability to be one of the best defensive backcourts in the league after like Boston. And so I do think that if they, and you saw what Drew and Derek White did to to ball handlers throughout the entire season. If DeJounte and Herb can get locked into that kind of backcourt, and with the weapons and the offensive athletes that you have on the team, I think that just raises the floor of the Pelicans. It raises their offense and it raises their defensive floor. And so I want to see Herb come in and take this as a launching point to become one, if not hands down, the best wing defender in the NBA, because still people were like, Herb made it over X, Y, Z. Next season, it should be, oh, yeah, well, Herb definitely make it. Who else made it outside of him? And I think that's something that Herb can do this season. So I'm looking for him to continue his three-point shooting and to take that defense, first team all defensive awarding as a launching point to make this a run to be first team all defense.
Yeah, and I got Herb a little bit higher up in my list, and I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, but yeah, I agree with all your points there. So my number 8 is a player who was not on this list last year, Carlo Makovich. Listen, going into about to start September, I didn't think Carlo would be on this list, right? Like I thought surely something would have happened of significant value in the trade department for the Pelicans when it came to the center, right? And so that's not the case. Obviously, he comes out, he has a good showing in the G League at the end of last year, comes out in Summer League, sets the world on fire, and people are like, who is Carlo Makovich from that standpoint? Listen, like, life is about opportunity, right? This is the biggest opportunity you're going to get. I don't know how many times a second-round pick who was stashed overseas that went to the G League is going to get an opportunity to carve out a role early in the season in a position that he plays that is necessary for the team. Again, the traits are there. Like you saw the rim protection. You saw the floor spacing. You saw the lob ability. You saw the switch ability. Like you saw a little bit of all of those things. But can you put it together consistently, right? Like you don't expect Carlo Makovich to go out there and play 30 minutes a night and score 20 and 10. That's not what any of the centers on the Pelicans are going to be asked of. But in your stints, can you hold up defensively? Can you not be a liability on the offensive end? Can you do enough on the defensive end to rim protect and be able to switch every now and then like this roster wants to be able to do from top to bottom? So I look at Carlo Makovich in really as a position of opportunity more than talent or anything else, and say, hey, what are you going to do going into the season where I think he's like NBA. If you can't seize a role right now where there's an obvious gap at your position and you're a second-round pick who the team just gave a contract to, because if you can't do it then, I don't know how long your NBA life is going to last from that standpoint, because I don't know another situation that's going to be more advantageous for you from that standpoint. So Carlo Makovich is my number 8. Number 7 is Jordan Hawkins, right? Like, look, Hawk had one of the most confusing rookie years that, we've seen in a while, in the NBA, comes on the scene, has some breakout games on the national spotlight, and then just kind of dimmers away as the season goes along and is no longer in the rotation. Again, for better or for worse, for right or wrong, Willie Green is digging his heels down that you are going to be a two-way player if you are literally number one, Zion Williamson, or if you are number 15 on the roster. And so Jordan Hawkins, again, it's not his capability and really it's not his traits, because he moves his feet well. He's a long defender. Like, again, it reminds me a lot of Ray Allen. It's his size, right? It's his strength. And can he be good enough, right? Like, can you not be Jordan Hawkins on the floor, let's automatically get him on the post and let's automatically go for 2. Can you not be that? Can you just be good enough on the defensive end? Because obviously you know what he brings from the offensive standpoint. His ability to movement shoot that never really got incorporated into the roster. Like, you talk about what teams need to win championships, not to win around, not to get out the play and win championships. You got to be diverse. You got to be able to beat teams in multiple ways. And when they do everything they can to stop Zion, they do everything they can to stop everybody else that the Pelicans have. Oh, we can break out this Jordan Hawkins movement offense. So you're chasing him around the court, and oh hell, what do we do now? Like that's a position you want the Pelicans to be as they start next season. And Jordan Hawkins still, to me, is really the only movement shooter on this roster that hasn't been tapped into to really bring out the real Zion from that standpoint. So Jordan Hawkins is number 7 for me. Who you got at number 7? Unless it's Jordan Hawkins.
No, I didn't give my number 10, but Hawk was not number 10. So yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think this is more about, can you compete defensively well enough to get on the floor? And really with like we talked about with Javonte Green coming in, when you do get in to be, to make shots, right? And to be effective, because we saw a lot of games, like he had some games where he was flamethrowing. There were some games where he was off. And so now you are fighting for even more of a time. Now that DeJounte is here, and now you have all of these other different players, and now like Matt Ryan being off, like when you are being off the team, when you're called on, like you're going to have to go in and make the shots when you're in, because that's how you'll stay on the floor. I think he is in a situation where if he doesn't play well defensively, like the Pelicans could like go a lot of different places for a good span of time. We've seen Willie Green do that. And so when he does get in on the floor, can you be effective and can you, compete on the defensive end and not get played off the floor in a sense? So my number 7, this is where I had CJ McCollum. And I think this is going to be a huge, huge crossroads for CJ McCollum, not only for his stint at the Pelicans, but what might happen afterwards. Because remember, CJ next year is going to be an expiring contract, and there's going to be a lot of, interesting conversations, because although he will be getting paid $33 million, he will be very, very attractive as a rental for a team, and then also as an expiring contract. So if the Pelicans wanted to move off of him, they could very well do that next season, and it'd be something that be looked at as a positive, as against like has it been previous years, like that $30 million contract has stopped the Pelicans from doing this, that, and the other. Also, again, we've talked about this, and I've seen comments, I've seen people tweet me, "You crazy if you think CJ McCollum is coming off the bench." Let me tell you something. In the game of basketball, there are 5 players on the floor. 5. I think we all can agree that Zion Williamson is starting. I think we all can agree that Brandon Xavier Ingram is starting. They did not trade DeJounte Murray to come off the bench. Herb Jones just made first team all defense, not second team, not he should have been. He made first team all defense. The best version of Herb is starting and guarding the best player. That is how you maximize Herb Jones. So that's 4 players. I haven't mentioned a center yet. So somebody, and I also haven't mentioned Trey Murphy. Somebody has to come off the bench. There's only 5 slots. So they're not going to give the Pelicans a 6th player because there's 6 good team sets, or 7 because there's 7 good players. There's only 5. So someone is going to have to come off the bench. And I think CJ's ability to understand what I said a couple of pods ago. Leadership evolves, it changes over time. Sometimes you need to step in and be big brother and do the talking. Sometimes you need to sit back and listen. Sometimes you need to be supportive on the floor by making shots and taking shots because other people aren't there mentally and whatever the case is. Sometimes you fall into a situation where the team has gotten so much better around you that you plug in and you do what you need to do at certain times. And his ability to not only be a good 6-man on the floor, but to mentally stay the leader that he is, stay the guy that keeps the locker room together that he is, while also accepting the fact that this team has a lot more talent on it than when you got here. And so now for this team to get where they're going, you're going to have to lead in a different way. For him to accept that mentally, I think that is a huge step for the Pelicans, because if CJ McCollum, as much as people joke and laugh and he is respected in the NBA, both by players on his team and other players. You don't get to be the president of the Players Association by nobody not liking you and respecting you. So for the team and the young players to see this respected veteran say, okay, listen, I'm going to take my role and do what I need to do, because it's the elephant in the room. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it is what it is, right? For him to do that, I think will do wonders for this team. And I just think that CJ will be a goddamn baller as the sixth man, attacking second units, getting in pick and rolls with Carlo and Eves, and hitting Trey for shots. And I think it'll allow him to be better, longer. We saw his body break down as he had to play 40 minutes and shoot every time. It'll allow him to be fresher, so that when you get to the playoffs, you don't see that burnt out CJ McCollum that you saw against OKC. So yeah, he's my number 7. Oh, and I got 6. Yeah, at 6. So number 6 is Trey Murphy. And it's okay. and I think right here is where I call Trey Murphy the walking conundrum. We are now on high level conundrum when you talk about his playing style and what is going to happen with Trey. What's the contract going to look like? And now with DeJounte, with Herb and Trey, and CJ and all these other guys, like, where does Trey go? Because if CJ is the 6th man, is Trey starting? Is Trey the 7th man? Are you paying? It's just a lot of questions for Trey. And I think for Trey personally, coming into the season, we've seen him put on weight. We've seen him get bigger throughout his time. And obviously, as you grow, you get more strength and more mass on your body. But it's time for him to be a real two-way threat. I think Trey has the ability to really be that, right? We saw him in the dunk contest. We've seen him in three. He's a ferocious three-point shooter. I think if he becomes another two-way, long, lanky threat off the bench where they could come in and he could just do whatever, because I do think Trey is going to close a lot of games. And so in order to do that, you have to not be the weak link on the defense. And so if he comes into this season with a commitment, because I think the shooting and the athleticism and even his, pump fake, one dribble, dunk on you game has gotten a lot better. I think that will continue to naturally grow because of the hooper that he is. I think if he comes in with a commitment to the defensive end, kind of similar to what we saw, what's his name for the Pacers, man? The one who used to Neesmith. How Neesmith kind of came in last season and was like, I'm taking all defensive challenges, and all of a sudden this dude became like this really good defender. I want Trey to come into the season with that kind of mentality, because I think the offense is going to be there. I think he's going to get fed enough because of DeJounte's playmaking, Zion's willing to pass, and they're just going to play Trey a hell of a lot of minutes. I think that he's going to get those offensive looks, and that's going to be there. But if he comes in with a commitment to the defensive side of the ball, man, I think that is something that can unlock, again, the ceiling and the floor for the Pelicans. And I'm very interested to see what's his take on the defensive side of the ball, and really what's the plan for Trey Murphy this upcoming season.
Right. At 6, I also had Trey Murphy. Look, I agree with everything you just said. From his very first minute in Pelicans Summer League, it was obvious this guy can be a really good rebounder and he can be a really good defender, right? Like, he was locking up Evan Mobley in that Summer League game, and Jonathan Kuminga, like, locking them up. And ever since the three-point trade, you learn the defense hasn't necessarily been there. But to your point, and just like we talked about with Zion, all the tools are in the bucket, right? Quick feet, long arms, fast, can pop off the floor. Literally everything you need to be good defensively, Trey already possesses. And so I couldn't agree more on that end. Here's why I think he lands in this area for me. I think this is a big year to determine what is Trey's ceiling going to potentially be. Not saying that he will reach his ceiling this year, but we've waited like year and year to see, okay, Trey's a really good catch-and-shoot player. Found that out rookie year. Great. Then you saw him build on that. Last year was a little – I kind of throw last year out because he started the year with an injury and never really got into a rhythm and never really was Trey Murphy. But you saw a little bit of creation off the dribble. You saw a little bit of, to your point, one-step pull-up inside when someone chases you off the three-point line. But I want to know, like, is there that level where he's going to develop into a creating wing? I don't know if it's there or not. Again, we keep waiting to see. For the people who are like, well, keeping Brandon Ingram on the roster is holding Trey back from being. Trey's been playing 30 minutes a game for the last 2 years. So it's not like he hasn't been giving the opportunities to grow. Like, are you comfortable if you're a Pelicans fan saying, okay, they're selling out everything to stop Zion. We trust Trey to create as the second option on the floor? Because I'm not there yet, right? And so I don't know if that's the trajectory he's going to go. And because of everything you just said about Trey, I don't know if he has to be that player. Like, if he just becomes an extremely good catch-and-shoot player, a Klay Thompson-esque at 6'10", like, he's still a hell of a player. Like, he's still teetering on an all-star level player. And not to mention, if he finds it out and picks it up from a defensive level, like, that's still a really high ceiling. So I don't know which direction it's going to go. But everything this team has, I don't know if he necessarily has to develop that off the dribble game. But again, can you get back to the Trey Murphy that's shooting 42, 43% daggers, where you see he has the ball and you start walking like Swaggy P to the other side of the court because you know it's going in? Like, there was times where you saw some of that from Trey last year, but a lot of last year was like, dang, can Trey just get back to being Trey? Can you start the year from that standpoint and then grow from there? The player I had number 5, which I think these two players will be connected for a long time, is where you had Herb Jones, right? Herb and Trey are going to be on this team, I think, for a long time, and they're going to be connected. They're best friends on the team. They are the inverse of one. They're the tetraverse of one another. One's really good on offense. One's really good on defense. You want one to get really good get better on offense. You want the other to get better on defense. Like that. That's where they are. They're in the seesaw for me. Here's where I am with Herb Jones. There were times through the season last season, even though Herb was shooting 40+ from 3 and it was as good as cash anytime he was right on from the corner, there were still times I feel as if Herb was thinking too much offensively. You bring up a really good point in terms of what the Celtics are able to do, having two guards that are so good defensively in Drew Holiday and Derek White. Well, I'm not really worried about DeJounte Murray still being able to score. I think that next step for Herb is not only being able to shoot the 3, and not only, again, he added that transition game, that Josh Hart game, where he was really good at finishing in transition, but can you be to a point where sometimes you're like, Herb, maybe not shoot that one, right? There was too many times where we're like, Herb, shoot that, and he would pass, or he wouldn't even look to shoot. I want Herb to get to the point where he's so confident in a midi. He's so confident in an open 3. He's so confident in a particular move that you're like, all right, Herb, maybe pass it to somebody else next time. So you're not thinking. I think the thing that makes the Celtics so dangerous on offense are not just because they have all-world talent 1 through 5, because every player thinks they got the green light. And for the most part, because of the looks and the qualities that they shoot, they should have the green light, and you should give them that confidence to do so. I want to see if Herb can really take that next step offensively, where he's playing confident time in and time out off the offensive court, whether it's an open 3. He's almost feeling as if, man, that's disrespectful. You're not going to come out to guard me, because guess what? Herb is going to have the worst defender on him every single night, right, from that standpoint. So he should be able to, at 6'8", use the God-given abilities for him to take advantage of those mismatches from that standpoint. So I got Trey at 6. I got Herb at 5. What you looking at?
So my number 5 is where I have Carlo. I have Carlo really high in this situation. And part of it also, just a spoiler alert, 4 is Eves. Eves Nisi. So obviously these two together, I'm kind of grouping these two together as that's because the Pelicans need a center. They need a center either to start if they want to start a center and not go to 5 best players, or if they just don't start a center and just play with a center. Whatever is going to happen, you need rim protection. You need big bodies to rebound. You need to have it. And so at 5 and 4 for Carlo and Eves, somebody has to separate themselves as this is the center moving forward. Because I think that Eves has the potential to do it as a tall guy who an active body who goes for blocks. You saw him get dunked on in summer league, and he said, "I'm gonna go for it. That's what happens." And so I think you need that guy. With the amount of offensive talent, again, I hate to keep relating the Pelicans to other teams, but you've seen with not having like a household name go-to center, you saw with Luka and Kyrie being incredible, with just having rim protectors and guys who catch lobs and know what they do. Like you saw what that does for a team. They got to the finals with that. I think the Pelicans have a similar offensive punch when you think about the guys that's there. You just need somebody to rim protect. You saw what happened with JV and not being able to stay on the floor for Willie Green. You saw what happened when Larry Nance, God bless him, in his 6'7" frame trying to jump with Mo Wagner and Jonathan Isaac and all of those 7-footers. Eves is the guy that can come in and do that. And Carlo, this is an opportunity. The Pelicans brought you over and they've had you in the farm system. This is for what you've been, literally everything that you've been cashing, that you've been building and saving up with the Pelicans. This is the moment you cash that in, right? You get this contract, go into this season, filling the roles that you need. Make sure that the 3-ball is there, the floor spacing is there, and just be athletic and be the rim protector that they need, the big body that they need, because someone has to step up and get that role. All of these great players, they all fit in different things. DeJounte and CJ and Herbert. Nobody can do what the two guys possibly can do, and obviously Daniel Tice as well. So nothing can do with those guys, but you want to see someone be able to come in and separate themselves as, you know, the center, the new center of the for the Pelicans moving forward. And so I have Carlo and Eves together at 5 and 4.
All right. So at 4, here's where I have Willie Green. All right. So we talk about what this season means for so many people, right? Like people starting to see Zion's light bulb turning on, so to speak, right? And people starting to see Brandon Ingram in a career crossroads, right? Like this is the only way you could put it. We just talked about how this is kind of a crossroads for Trey. But I look at it, even though Willie Green just got an extension, I look at this season as, okay, Willie, you didn't have the pieces you need to be successful. Going into this year, Zion's locked in. Going into this year, I gave you nothing but athletes. Going into this year, I gave you rim protectors at center. Going into this year, I gave you another punch. You needed more scoring, I gave you another one and traded one, DeJounte Murray, and traded future capital for it. Going into this year, you got everything you need, right? You have everything you need to run the system you want, so you don't have to worry about JV not playing in the second half because he can't. You don't have to worry about none of that. You got all the things you need to be successful. Now you need to go show it, right? Now you need to go do it. And so we talk about Willie Green, and again, I will be on this platform, and I'll say it time and time again. I do think Willie Green is a good coach, and I do think that just like players, coaches have to grow, and coaches have to learn, and coaches have to be on this list of growth and importance every single year too, because you need to add to the game. The biggest knock on Willie Green, which again, depending on which fan page you're a part of and which fans or which team you watch more often, everyone's going to say the same thing. You need to be more adaptable at in-game adjustments. You need to be able to be more flexible. But for Willie Green in particular, like I think his biggest issue, and again, you see it around the league. You see it with Malone in Denver. He didn't want to play his young players. They got rid of KCP and all those guys. Like, you got to play his young players. I think Willie Green gravitates to the veterans because they have the know-how and because there's so much pressure to win, even though the Pelicans haven't won anything in their history, there's so much pressure to win with Zion, and you're so close, you have so much talent, you can't let a rookie like Jordan Hawkins shoot himself off the court or get played off the court defense. So you got to stick to what you know, right? But I think that there's a balance of that. And I think, again, the best coaches figure that out in time of, here's an opportunity or stretch where I got to give this guy runway to grow in the middle of the season because I might need him at the end. I think that's an area for him. I think with so much talent on this team, you're going to have to have those tough conversations with the CJ McCollum. Have those tough conversations with the BI. There was parts all throughout last year. He didn't close with BI. He didn't close with CJ. He pulled Zion out the game at the end of the games. Like, those are hard hard decisions to make as a head coach with so much money and politics and things tied to your star players. But the best head coaches, goddamn it, they make them. Time and time again, they make those tough decisions, and you just got to live with it on the other side. And so now that this locker room has like built so much trust and built so much belief in one another and built so much belief in Willie Green, now's your time to cash in on that. Look, we got guys who can play 1 through 10, 1 through 12, whatever it is on a given night. If you ain't got it that night, come sit right next to me. Like, that's what it's got to be for Willie Green from that standpoint. So I think this is a huge year for him to kind of take that next step and grow and be more malleable. But now you have the weapons in your tool base to do so. So number 3, I had Eves as well. Look, I've been watching because there is no center trade and Brandon Ingram's still on the team. So I got nothing to do but to evaluate the talent that is currently on the roster. I've been watching Eves Meesefield all summer long. When I look at his highlights and I look at his lowlights, the things that he does the best, even though through watching every single game with him, are the exact things that the Pelicans need him to do out the gate. Rebound, putbacks, block shots, clean up, hustle, man. Like, there's so many of those. I like to call them double pick 6 plays where he makes a block or gets a rebound on the other end. He beats everyone down the court. He gets a post-up position and gets a dunk on the other end. Like, there's so many of those that he had in college that this team has been missing for so long. We've been talking about, Jackson Hayes kind of, but not really. Like, since Anthony Davis, they haven't had somebody who's a dog at the rim, who constantly like, damn, they got another rebound, who constantly is like, damn, they blocked another shot. Like, you haven't had that on the roster for years, right? And now this guy, just like with Carlo, to your point, this is every opportunity to seize the exact role you were meant to play. So now, again, you got to figure it out. He hasn't been playing basketball that long. He's got to adapt to the NBA game. But even in Summer League, every game he got better, and every game he got more explosive, and every game he started doing something that's like, ooh, well, maybe he can play. And so when he walks up to training camp, this time last year, nobody was looking at the Mavericks and were like, the Mavs are going to be in the finals. They had just missed the playoffs the year before. This time last year, nobody was looking at Derek Lively and being like, oh, that's a 10-year player next to Luka. That guy's going to be an all-star one day. Nobody was saying that. It wasn't until the season started, you got into the mix, you got into positions to succeed, that you saw, man, that guy can make a huge impact. I'm looking at Eves Meesey because, again, his skill set and the needs of this team are 1-1. And if they can make those teams work together, I think, again, like, people are like, oh, well, the Pelicans don't have a starting center. We've already done a podcast about, like, yeah, but everything else is good. And so they might be able to get away with it because most people aren't putting their back to the basket with the game on the line because most people don't have Jokic and Embiid. So in that scenario, you can get away with it. But I think this guy can excel. I think next to all these other pieces, we talk about Herb Jones and Trey and DeJounte and all these defensive stalwarts. They've been doing this, and they've been top 10 ranked in the NBA in defense the last 2 seasons with no rim protection. So now you get some behind you, and now you get an athletic guy behind you. You're creating easy buckets. You're making easy stops, and you can be more aggressive on the defensive end. And so if he can be the puzzle piece to connect the rest of the puzzle, I think the sky's the limit for a young player, and he's Meesey from that standpoint. So who you got at 3?
Yeah, just to close out on Eves, you make really awesome, incredible points. I think Eves is in a perfect position where he can grow in a space that is conducive to everything that he does great. So this is a great opportunity. Like, you're not going to find a lot of places where if you come into as a top lottery pick and you score 4 points, but you have 7 rebounds and 2 blocks that you might be given the game ball at night. That is the kind of thing you don't find places like that and fits like that, especially for a young rookie player. So excellent talk about Eves. So at number 3, I got what might be a surprise. I got the big fella. I got Zion here, and okay. I think there are people. Obviously, there are 2 other people that I think their growth is more important to the success of the Pelicans. But obviously, Zion is the most important person on the Pelicans, right? And I think this has to be a season. We just saw the NBA 2K ratings. You know, we love 2K. And, like, you know, Zion got hurt, like, at the end of the season. But he was really freaking good when he played. And you see it come out and like Ja didn't play a lot of games and he got rated over Zion. And everybody's kind of like the team is so like you look at this roster, you're like, damn, that's a lot of players. Damn, that's a lot of good players. And everybody's podcast is saying, but Zion can't stay healthy. But Zion is gonna let you down. But you can't believe in Zion. Hey man, if this ain't a FU season laid out in front of you, you got everything you need as far as teammates go. This is a season to just kill everything. There is no particular growth area for me with Zion other than be the best freaking player in the league. Shoot for the best player in the league. Whatever that entails from Zion, because I think Zion can do all of that. I think he can be a defensive menace and a defensive impact player. Obviously, his scoring ability is off the charts and he's damn near unguardable. His playmaking, obviously, he's continuing to grow, but he's a damn good playmaker as he is. So much so that there's a whole offense called Point Zion. I don't think you're doing that unless your player can also pass. So he can do a lot of things. This is just the season for mentality. Go into the season, starting off the season, how you finished, but obviously before the injury, but how you finished last year. I keep telling everybody, LeBron is, in my eyes, the greatest player to ever touch a basketball. Anthony Davis is one of the best big men of all time, one of the best defensive players. I saw fear in their eyes when Zion was walking them down. And that is the Zion that needs to be on the floor for the Pelicans, night in and night out. They go 2 possessions without giving you the ball. Stop everything and demand the goddamn ball. Go get the ball. They doubling you. They putting bodies in front of you. Make plays off of it. If you can't get through it, make plays off of it. Stay effective, but keep your foot on their necks. I think this is a season where Zion, with the amount of talent that he has and the fact that he is locked in, the money is there, everything is in front of you to seize this opportunity to remind them. You always, what's your favorite adage? Show them who you are. Shout out to Wakanda Forever. This is the opportunity to do that. And so for me, Zion's growth, obviously you want him to develop a shot and all of that. That is, we beat that drum, over and over again. Zion can score and do whatever the hell he wants and get whatever bucket he wants whenever. This is the year that you need to. This is the year you need to grab the NBA by the throat and tell them and remind them who you are. And so that's my growth for Zion. Mentality, come into the season with a killer focus and a killer mentality, the way you ended last season, the way you struck fear in the hearts of the Lakers. You should do that night in and night out, and the Pelicans will have a great opportunity to win every game, especially with the way that this season starts. And you have these not cupcake teams, but like it's not a hard schedule to start. Go out there, and I'm talking about after 10 games, people should be like, "Oh shit, Zion." So that's what I want to see from Zion this year. So he's at 3. Number 2 is obviously Brandon Ingram. You called it career crossroads. I've been saying it all summer. If you are motivated by the money, I am not mad at that. I want everybody to get every penny that they want ever in life. Yay, capitalism. But the way that you've been playing and your stubbornness to do, to evolve or to change your shot diet or change the way you play now has affected not only your reputation, which the NBA has told you to your face. All these teams that could have traded for you didn't, but it's now affecting your pockets. And now, if that is what motivates you, you have to come into this season with it on your mind to also remember to remind people who the hell you are. We just saw he posted on his Instagram, posted one of my favorite Jay-Z quotes where he says the best way to look at someone is to not look at them straight, right? To let them be off to the side and then see what they are. And see who they really are. That's powerful words coming from my favorite rapper. But that quote shows me that he has to be in the lab and working on the things that he needs to work on. No one has seen Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram is like in the ether somewhere. I want to see him come into this season with a newfound mentality. Take it as a disrespect. I don't give a damn what you take it as. Whatever motivates you. You have been disrespected to your face. And so now it's your opportunity to take open threes, to show the NBA that you can shoot because he can. I keep stretching that freaking Charlotte Hornets game. Why? Why would you show me that and not go back and I can't have it? Why? Go back and watch that game and watch how decisive he was. Watch how he was letting it fly. And the honest truth is that this team is going to be built around Zion. And the Pelicans have shown you that. They have told you that this team is going to be built around Zion. So it's upon you to, if you want to be a part of that, to do the things that need to be done to be a part of that. But even if you don't, and you want to get paid to do something, that go somewhere else and get paid, the NBA has shown you, teams have shown you, especially in this cap strap second apron NBA, that they're not going to pay you with the way you play, right? You're not a hot commodity the way you think that you are. And so when to get to that point, you have to be able to show other teams that you are able to fit in with other players. No one is going to pay you to be a number one option. So you have to show that you're able to fit in with other players and play a modern NBA game that is conducive to winning on a team. And you can get a paycheck from the Pelicans or from another team by doing just that. And so I want to see him grow into evolving his game. I think he is primed for a breakout year. I think he is primed for a FU year, just like Zion, because Brandon Ingram is one of the best hoopers that in the league. He is one of the best hoopers in the league. He will get a bucket regardless. I think, again, he had a bad rap last year because he came back from injury and he doesn't do well after injury, and then he had to deal with Lou Dort. I don't put any of that on Brandon Ingram. But now you're past that. You're back from injury. Now you have a newfound motivation. Go out and put it on the floor and show other teams, the Pelicans or other teams, that you can be part of a winning team. And I think that helps the Pelicans tremendously if he comes in with that kind of mentality.
Right. I also had Brandon Ingram as number 2. Who do you want to be, right? Like, you're walking into this summer, and again, it's been an awful year for you. Starting back in FIBA last year. And to your point, I don't think all of it's necessarily fair, right? Like, some of this is Zion's fault that Brandon Ingram hasn't been able to mold his game over the last couple of years because he's been asked to do more, right? Like, he's been asked to play his game and people play around him because Zion hasn't been available. And then when Zion's available on the fly, you're like, oh, by the way, B.I., this is how I need you to play. And so I think part of that is unfair to him. But to your point, like, are you willing to change? At the end of last season, I keep going back to it. He highlighted, I want this summer to be uncomfortable. Me and Jose talk about getting comfortable in the uncomfortable. I want people around me who aren't going to tell me what I need to say or what I want to hear. I want people to push me a different way. These are the things that he said to you. And so to this point, he's been somewhere in the country. I saw him taking pictures with his son, got his beard all wrangled out, looked like he just locked himself in the gym like Herb did last time. And again, I think that's a great thing because at this point, B.I.'s not proven he can be a number 2. I think he's proven he can be a number 3 because, like, if you look around the NBA, if you want to get paid by a number 2 as a number 2, like, there's certain things you got to be able to do and that people are willing to pay. And you look at next summer and ain't a whole lot of winning teams with cap space there either. So, like, at this point, you need to prove that, hey, I can be a number 2 on a championship team. And to your point, this is the first time you get to go in the summer. Zion's in peak form, ready to go. He's the center. I need to learn how to play around him. I need to learn how to play with the other people on the team and the other talent on my team. What are you going to do in that scenario? How are you going to respond? I try to be a student of history versus a victim of the moment. His whole career, he's gotten better. Every single year, he's added some. There aren't very many people in the NBA who average 25 and 5 over the last 5 years. He's like one of 5. There's not a large list of it. He's a hell of a talent. But you've got to be able to adjust in order to win, just like we see in the comments, just like you see in the NBA when guys change environments and where guys are put in different positions, it's all to win. And it's all to be able to get their team in the best position to win. And I think Brandon Ingram understands that. And to be honest, I expect him to respond. I just think that's how he's wired. And again, it's taken this time, but you're finally here from that standpoint, which leaves my number 1 on this list, is a player you already mentioned, Zion Williamson. Last year, Zion wasn't in my top 5. Brandon Ingram was, because you kind of knew even if he wasn't everything, he still was pretty damn good. But now, to your point before, now that I've seen it, now that I've seen what that defensive-minded Zion, that my favorite Zion is the give me that shit Zion. Now that I've seen that Zion, I need that Zion from day one, because that's a Zion that nobody wants to see. Look, the reason why I say that, again, Zion's improvement is so important on this team, because let's say CJ is at Fitz all year long, doesn't want to be a 6-man. Let's say DeJounte is getting up shots and doesn't want to be a point guard. Let's say B.I.'s like, the hell with y'all, trade me, you don't want to pay me, I don't want to shoot threes. If Zion is playing the way Zion Williamson is capable of, none of that matters, because he is so good that he will drag your team to victory night in and night out, because there's no one on the other side that you got for them. Even the Celtics. They didn't know. I was watching the Celtics versus Pels game early last season. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown were in fisticuffs. They were in the gulag. They had no idea what to do with Zion. KP, he didn't want none of Zion. Like, him at his peak, I think is a top 5 player in this league. And again, I think he can be that on the offensive end, but where he's different from Jokic, where he's different from Shea, where he's different from Luka, I think he can be a menace on the defense. I've said it from the beginning, not a capable defender, not an average defender. I think Zion can be an impactful defender. So where games like last year where you watch him versus Kawhi, and Kawhi's trying to close out the team, and Zion's like, you got to go through me, and Kawhi's like, well, not very many people can do that. And so the Pelicans end up winning that game. Like, that's the type of Zion that I think he has the capability to be, and it's all boiled down to the same thing. He hasn't been the player since Duke because he hasn't looked, he hasn't trained, he hasn't had the physique that he was since Duke. He's coming out and says he wants to be leaner than what he was at Duke. He's coming out and says, I want it all. And again, from everything you've seen since that in-season tournament game, there's no reason not to believe in him. So if that guy comes out like that, the Pelicans are in for a treat. And the fans are in for a treat, because I've been saying it for 6 years now. The biggest travesty of basketball is that you haven't seen Zion Williamson play 1 minute in the playoffs, because something tells me the NBA, there's a reason why people make fun of Zion, and Stephen A. to this day is still coming out talking about he's eating tables on stuff like that, like he's on First Take even when he missed a whole season. There's a reason why the NBA is locked in on this young man, because they know you can't give up on him, because the moment he figures it out, they talk about the Olympics coming up in 4 years and who's going to be on that team and what's going to happen when LeBron and KD happens and the world is taking over versus the Americans. Well, again, show me the foreign international player that you are going to put against Zion if Zion's at his peak Xanos power. Show me who that is. Show me what that player looks like.
With the physical FIBA rule.
show me what that looks like versus Zion Williamson if he's playing at max power. So again, I think, regardless of all the other people we've named on this list, if Zion is the Zion that everyone is seeing and hopes that he starts the season to be, I think the Pelicans are in a much different conversation. People talking about them in a much different light 10, 20 games in the season, because I think he still possesses that special that not very many people have. So who is your number one?
Excellent piece on Zion. That was awesome. I agree that Zion is elite of the elite, and I think that if he can get to where he needs to be, this team is in a totally different conversation. My number one is obviously someone you've mentioned already, and I haven't. With all of these players, all of this talent, the ceiling where this team could be, I think they don't get there unless Willie Green takes another step as a coach. I think he is the single most important person for the Pelicans, this season's Pelicans, because coaching is I do not coach in NBA, not college, nowhere close to that. But I coach a men's league, and I have players, I have stars, I have role players, I have all of that. It's difficult to coach a team. It's very difficult to coach a team. It's super difficult to coach a good team. It's very easy to F up as a coach because of your, whatever it is, your beliefs, whatever it is. When you see a good team falter, it's very easy to see that it's the coach not doing things well. And again, Willie is I agree with you. Willie is a good coach. Every single year the wins have increased. Have they gotten to where you want to as far as like how deep injuries have played a part? But they haven't. But I mean, they won 49 games last season, and in a non as super duper supernova competitive as the NBA West was last year, in a non-year like that, that'll get you the 5 seed, the 4 seed, whatever the case is. But it didn't, right? This season, to your point, you have everything laid out in front of you. You have all of the players that you think, even the big swing that they made. Like DeJounte is a Willie guy. Like he is a Willie guy. Both sides of the ball, hyper active on the defensive end, super intense. That's his type of guy. And so you have everything that you need. You have switchable bigs. If this team gets in the season and CJ is not doing what he's supposed to do, and Trey is sitting on the bench, or the Hawk is just not getting on the floor, and you need shooting or whatever the case is, or you're not playing the right rotations, it's just going to be very difficult for Willie Green to manage everything that he has on his plate. It just is. You have the Brandon Ingram situation. You have the CJ McCollum situation. You have the center situation. You have the fact that you can't get your 5 best players on the floor and also a center. There's just a lot of things for Willie Green to manage. And we've seen Willie Green be able to manage the personalities. The issue is that, will you be able to manage the personalities as well as the X's and O's on the floor? And if that means listening to James Borrego, if it means, getting more input from the players, you have to be able to be malleable. I've watched years and years. Again, everybody knows my affinity for the Heat. I've watched Eric Spoelstra play Haywood Highsmith at the 4. Undrafted, who knows who this guy is, started him. And he came in and played. I've seen him bench Tyler Hero and play other guys. The Celtics, Peyton Pritchard played minutes in the NBA Finals and knocked down shots. Peyton Pritchard would not see the floor for Willie Green's New Orleans Pelicans team. You have to be able to be malleable and be able to switch up things that aren't working. And like you said, have tough conversations with people while also managing your X's and O's on the floor. And so with all of this ahead of him, with the difficulties that are going to be ahead, it's going to be very interesting. You're no longer like the rookie coach with the big eyes. You've gotten a second extension. You've gotten a second contract. Now it's time for you to kind of put some things on the floor and coach your way out of some tough situations. Win some games that you're not supposed to win, even though you're injured, but you're using your intellect, you're using the pieces that you do have and putting them in the best positions. It's going to be some times where we have to see Willie Green win a game, like with his X's and O's, with his substitution patterns. He's going to have to win the game because the talent is equal or whatever the case is. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how Willie maintains these things. Because again, we saw Monty Williams get the biggest contract in NBA history for a coach and then get fired the year afterwards. Extensions for coaches, if your owner is willing to pay, don't really mean a lot. But you did get that extension. And so now it's time to put those results on the floor. It is time to make sure you get this team to the finals. I mean, not the finals, the playoffs, healthy, right? If that means, like making show other people play, like it's going to be upon Willie Green to do that. And so I think he is the single most important person because I think the talent is going to be there. And even if somebody isn't playing well, you got enough people to plug in and do things. Are you going to plug them in and do things? And they can't get into the game unless Willie Green puts them in. And so he's going to be my most important person for this iteration of this season's Pelicans to be successful.
All right. So last year we finished with Jose at number 1 for me, Trey number 1 for you. Jose didn't even make my list this year, which again,
nope.
Not a knock on Jose, but just shows you the amount of talent that's been added to this particular roster. And Willie Green, again, I think you made all valid points, and it is yet to be seen what they're going to do. Again, and put all these things together. You finally have a locked-in light bulb on Zion. You finally have a full season for BI to say you are the number 2. No, not number 1. You are the number 2. what are you going to do with it? And how are you going to make it make sense so that, again, with so much on the line this season, you're able to capitalize and people are able to get paid and you're able to be happy on the other end. Because if not, something tells me this roster is going to look drastically different next year as well. So with that being said, again, man, this is never fails. This is my favorite episode of the summer to do just because of where they are. BI is the only one of this list really entering their prime. So something tells me we're going to be doing this again next summer. But what you got left for the people as, again, we get closer and closer to the training camp.
Yeah, appreciate everybody coming through and rocking for the longer episode. This is the one that we get up for because it's talking about these guys and the individual things that they can do to contribute. So appreciate you guys sticking around for the longer pod. So as always, you never know what people are going through. So give someone a smile today. Follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at Ain't No Basketball No E. That's on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you get your social media. Most importantly, subscribe to NewOrleans.basketball, and we'll see you guys next time.